Are you tired of spending so much time painting your minis and then putting them on a battlefield with shitty terrain? Well, today we're going to fix that. Welcome to the very first Terrain Tuesday, a day where we turn scrap junk and spare bits into epic 40k terrain that tells a story. And because it's Orktober, we are celebrating the greenskins with a terrain piece just for them, the Ork Rock. But before we get into the build, I want you guys to understand what an Ork Rock is. Let's talk about how orcs invade a planet. Orc invasions are one of the most chaotic and violent ordeals any warrior can ever experience. There's absolutely no sense to a greenskin attack. Where a normal invader follows basic tactics and strategies in order to maximize its survivability during the initial void battle and then the subsequent planetfall, the orcs just don't give a fuck. It is the obsessive goal of every single boy to be the first to get stuck in. It doesn't matter if he has to launch himself out of the battlecruiser that's barely inside the planet's atmosphere, or leap into the void hoping to land close enough to the enemy vessel to get in. The only thing holding back the insane battle lust of these Xenos is a slightly more controlled knob that has made it clear to his boys that they better not jump the gun or risk decapitation by a big choppa. These wiser orcs have a tiny bit more foresight to plan ahead and arrange a transport to get them safely to their target. And when I say safely, it doesn't really mean safely, because no orc contraption is ever really safe for anyone, the defender or the attacker. Now, the most common transport vessel created by the orc mechs is known as a brute ram ship. It's a spaceship in the shape of a giant knife. It's the orkiest thing you've ever seen, and it's used to stab itself into the enemy void ship at maximum speed with the purpose of damaging its target and disgorging its bloodthirsty warriors into the enemy ship via the enormous gash it just created. Now, this ship is excellent for void battles, but when it comes to planetary assaults, it would more than likely burn up during entry. For a vessel that is durable and fast enough to fight both in space and then land on a planet, the greenskins created the Rock. And with that said, I want to welcome you guys back to another 40 Facts about the 40k universe. I am your host, Gersh1, and today we're going to be talking about the Ork Rock. If you guys are new to the channel, we post Warhammer 40k lore videos every single day. What I try to do is I read you the lore in the beginning of the video, and then we do something that pertains to the hobby towards the end. Whether it's terrain building, kit bashing, painting, whatever it may be. In this situation, at the end of this video, we're going to create our very own Ork Rocks. It's going to be a piece of terrain for your board. It actually came out pretty awesome, so expect that at the end of the video. If you guys have suggestions for other topics of 40k that you guys would like me to do, or any project that you guys would like to see, just let me know in the comment section below. And if you enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. It is because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Ork Rock. To put it simply, Ork Rocks are hollowed out asteroids used by the greenskins as attack ships, landing transports, and even projectiles. These straightforward spacecrafts come in all shapes and sizes. Some are big enough to fit multiple stampas in, while others hold only a small unit of infantry. Each one is as tough as the orcs crammed inside. They are capable of shrugging off head-on collisions with other asteroids, as well as thousands of pieces of scrap metal and debris released by the rest of the ramshackled ships in the fleet. During every voyage, the orcs inside each rock will pass the time by throwing things at each other in the hopes of either cracking or outright destroying the other rocks. On the rare chance that this catastrophe does happen, the greenskins inside can either abandon the rock and join another vessel, or drift off into space, never to be seen again. Now, there are some rare rocks that are equipped with powerful void shields. If a war boss or a captain is lucky enough to have one of these in his fleet, he usually places it in the front of the fleet to act as a battering ram. Most of these rocks have some type of a device that allows propulsion, usually a set of rockets that are jammed into it by their attending mech boys. How maneuverable these rocks are is usually a mystery, but never disappoints the greenskins, who are perfectly fine with crashing into anything, even if it's not their target. For the most part, these rockets are used for the charge during a void battle or to initiate a landing trajectory. However, when the Ork Rocks are traveling through space, they are almost always towed by an escort ship or a battle cruiser. This is actually a pretty dangerous job, as it can result in the attending void craft becoming part of the rock as it slams into the escort. Like all orky contraptions, the rocks are usually equipped with some type of weapon, from grabbing claws and drills for close quarter fighting to zap guns and labas. However, orc mech boys have learned the hard way that the smaller the rock, the less stacka it could take. After all, these things are hollowed out asteroids, so the recoil from a kill cannon is strong enough to break the Ork Rock completely open like a piñata at a kid's birthday party. They also understand that the force of these guns are capable of changing the trajectory of the floating rock, making the entire void battle a lot harder. But that is if the orcs decide to fire instead of just charging straight into the enemy. The true power and glory of the Ork rocks comes in their ability to land the greenskins onto the surface of a world. The defenders look on in terror as a meteor shower of death hurtles towards them. When an Ork rock makes impact, it is powerful enough to tear a hole into any fortification, as long as it doesn't smash apart, which happens a lot. Not only do these vessels slam into the surface and crush anything below them, but the shockwave of their landing is devastating. Each landed rock becomes a bastion for the Orks, a rallying point in a ready-made fortress. It's a strategy that is almost impossible to counter unless a planet has enough firepower to destroy every single rock that comes crashing down. The most famous use of this tactic was seen during the Third War for Armageddon, when the forces of the Prophet of the Wog, Gatskul Magor Thraka, battered the Hive World with his rocks. They landed all across the planet, some even plunged to their death in the world's huge oceans, but when they did properly land, they were incredibly dangerous. As well as being equipped with guns, the rocks contained teleporter arrays. These were swiftly used to bring Ork reinforcements to the planet, countering any Imperial attack. These included special kill marine mobs, stompas, artillery, and even gargants. This meant that once the Orks survived the landing, reinforcement was indefinite for the Orks. To this day, these massive fortresses are still fully functional and a massive target for the Imperial defenders of the world. Now that we know the lore behind the Ork rock, let's create one for the tabletop. The concept to this piece of terrain is really simple. I want a medium-sized rock that crash-landed and left a giant crater on the battlefield. Before I start this piece of terrain, I want to make sure that this build not only looks good, but also has some functionality to the actual game. This means that this rock has to be big enough to act as blocking terrain, and the crater needs to fit at least a full squad of Ork boys, or other infantry. With those goals in mind, I'm ready to start the build. For the rock, I will be using a styrofoam dome that I bought at my local arts and crafts store. These aren't that hard to find, you could even find them at the dollar store. I will be using pink insulation foam as my base. What I'm doing here is drawing out a rough outline of the base, which is supposed to depict the crash landing site of the Ork spaceship. Using my wire foam cutter, I'll cut along the outline of the piece and then shave down the base so that it doesn't rise up too far up from the board. Now that the piece was cut, I measured it out and I felt like I needed to add more depth to the rock, and so I took another styrofoam dome and cut off a piece of the bottom with a slight angle. I then attached it to the other piece of the dome to make it look like it was rising. Now this part wasn't really necessary later on, but I felt like it would make the rock look more circular. To smooth out the edges of the pink foam base, I hot glued aluminum foil onto the sides of the base and then formed a slope around the border. It should look like this. Once the border was glued, it was time to form the crater. I took the base back to the wire foam cutter and cut a thin border around the entire inside piece like so. I then took the inside cut and shaved it down and then attached it back to the actual base, giving this raised border around the crash landing site. This will help me further the illusion that the rock tore a gash into the battlefield as it landed. Using the same aluminum foil technique as before, I hot glued the foil around the inside border and it formed this crater. Once the crater was done, I went ahead and I hot glued the rock into its spot. Now it's time to make the rock look more rocky. To do this, I first needed to create some rock casts using a rock mold and some plaster of Paris. This you could also find in your local arts and crafts store. The mold and the plaster is usually found inside of those scenic volcano kits. That's where I got this from. Once the rock casts were dried, I hot glued them onto the styrofoam dome to give it that rocky shape. Now don't worry if there are gaps between the rocks, that's going to get fixed when we add Sculptamold. This product is part plaster and part paper mache. It works great when creating rough texture terrain. Just mix the water as instructed on the box, spray the foam dome with water to make sure that the Sculptamold sticks, and then apply it to the rock and kind of like work it around the entire piece. While the Sculptamold dries, I started to cut out some random pieces of scrap MDF board to act as like the ramshackled pieces of metal that the Orks usually attach to their vehicles. I tried my best to make these pieces all point in the same direction to give the illusion of movement, but as you can see, it's supposed to look chaotic. I also attached random pieces of corrugated cardboard to give off that scrap metal vibe. Next, it was time to attach the Ork escape hatch. To do this, I took an old medicine tube and I cut out the lid. You can also do this with the old school mini M&Ms, if you guys remember those dispensers. It just works as like a door for the actual rock. In order to get this piece securely onto the rock, however, I had to cut into the foam and glue the lid like so. For the rockets, I used the same medicine cylinder that I got the hatch from, and I cut it into 3 roughly equal lengths. I then attached wing-like extensions to the end of the rocket and got creative with the inside bits. For some, I used an empty pelon mini candy dispenser. If you're Mexican, you're going to know what I'm talking about. If not, just get creative. I also used a lid of a super glue container to act as kind of like the rocket. I also added random bits of wire from my broken headphones and some orc bits I had laying around. I then glued some sand around the edge of the crater and inside. Once all of that was dried, it was time to apply Mod Podge and black paint mixture onto the entire piece. This is to protect the pink foam and the styrofoam from the spray painting step because the aerosol usually eats away at the foam, so this mixture protects it. When it came to spray painting, I tried my best to only get the rock with a gray primer, but whatever I didn't get, I just went over with some black acrylic paint. This means the crater and everything that's supposed to be metal on the rock gets painted black. The rock then gets a layer of contrast paint. The color doesn't really matter, it's completely up to you. If you want a brown rock, you can paint it with brown, or if you want a purple rock, you can do that too. I don't even think the orcs would care. I then painted the wing bits with yellow because the majority of my orc army is bad moons and yellow represents their culture, and then the scrap pieces of metal got a metallic copper and a light dry brush of metallic silver. Then using a tore up foam brush, I dabbed on brown rust effects on the yellow parts and then hit it with a sepia wash. And finally, the crater gets a simple dry brush of tan to match my board, and there you have it, a crash-landed orc rock. I was actually really surprised at how long this terrain piece took to make, and I think the reason for that is because the plaster takes an entire day to dry. It's supposed to be 30 minutes. I don't know if I messed up and I added too much water or what was going on, but in the future, or if you guys are doing this, what I would recommend is do multiple of these at once, and then kind of like kill one step with, an entire process or whatever. Because I do want to build more. I want to change them up. Like I want bigger ones, and also the crater size, I want it to be different. I don't want it to all look like a giant penis. Some of them I want them just to be circles. And as you guys can see, the orc boys fit pretty well inside the crater, which was the main goal. And also the blocking terrain part is spot on. Not only can it block infantry pretty easily, but it could probably block some vehicles. But again, like in the future, I'll probably just build bigger or more oddly shaped rocks and add more bits and pieces. I actually want to tackle a orc attack moon, so subscribe to the channel if you guys want to get that, because that is going to be a big project. I want that to be like a good chunk of the board, basically, because orc attack moons are just supposed to be giant moons that crash land. So that's going to be fun because it's going to be multiple levels and stuff. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have suggestions for any other topics of 40K that you guys would like us to cover, just let me know what it is in the comment section below. And if you guys enjoy this type of content, please share with your friends on Facebook, hit the like button, comment down in the comment section below to tell the YouTube gods that you want to see more of this type of content. It just helps out the channel as well. We also have a Patreon link down in the description below. And like I said, I really want to get into more terrain builds just because I got that drive, that inspiration to build stuff. So subscribe to the channel and let me know what you guys want to see. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.